Alright, so now I just slipped and fell, right? Be on the concrete in the Publix, right? Now, just because you can see that one, whereas the other store I fell in, like I said, and now I got a rash under my arm. Don't know where that came from. But could it be my deodorant or something I use? Right? I don't know. It's not as bad as the right, but it's kind of there too, right? So again, right, you deal with things like I told you, right? Can't do any more or any less, right? It's like when I fell, I didn't feel I was paralyzed, right? Now, same as with threat. Damn. But what do you want? Perfection in an imperfect world. We're humans. We're not God, right? And that's Satan's problem with you, but not God's. God does what we are. God does what it made. Well, like I said, all Sheena could say is she did not make it clear to me the day we had sex that she didn't want to have sex, or we wouldn't have been able to have any sex at all where she let me do something with her, right? If you know what I mean. Whatever we did, though, if she didn't think it was sex and I pulled down her shorts and underwear, what else could she have thought it was we were doing? Oral sex only. Which even then, you gotta specify, hey, I want oral sex, not sex under a tree. Either one is under the tree, though. Right. And now, like I said, the Fonz here is trying to convince me I'm going bald now. Do I look like I'm going bald? No. No, the hairline's a little bit higher, right? And, or it's always been this high, whichever, right? But right in here and right in here, it was practically the same, right? It's always been a little bit higher on one side, right? I think since I was 25, right? But all I can do is what? Respond to them and tell them they're wrong. Right? See, some people want to be right when they're wrong. That's self-righteousness. No, you're not right. You're wrong. You're wrong. But the problem is, we can do each other wrong. Yeah, I know what you mean. But no one sets out to do someone wrong, like I said, right? hmm So again, we're gonna look at the spine, right, and the injury here. Mm-hmm. 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 There you go. All right, this is T1, right? Because the start, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But his is normal because this is what? Slanted down, right? And again, here's mine, right? The mine's not automated, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But anyway, So, this black one is the problem. There's a problem here. Right? This is the sacrum, right? And it's pinched about right here, right? All right, this looks like there's something wrong up here. All the way through here. All the way down, right? And this is flat. It's not supposed to be flat. Do I have to be my own doctor like Jesus? Right? All right. Physician, heal thyself. Okay. Am I? Or is God? Or is God? Right. The spirit within me. I know. The body can do nothing without the spirit anyway. I know. If the spirit is bypassing all this, right, to where I can walk, right, that's what's going on. Exactly. It's not me then, it's the spirit, right? Up to the spirit in the sky, where I wanna go when I die. Right, this is the T1, right? And even then, that just makes it look more apparent, right? Be worse, I know. See, all this is muscle, and I know, right? None of it's good. None of it's good. See, this is where my spinal fluid stops, by the way. Right? There's no spinal fluid down here, right? And there's supposed to be a lot. And see, only God can help it, not me, anyway. So again, this is the normal, and you see, right? No, right there. That's right there. Ain't normal. No. It's pushed up too much. Yeah, way too much. And see how this one here? Right. Exactly. And that's the neck, right? Okay, this here is the neck, I think. Or is it more going down there? Right. This here's where you get into the weird images with the CT, right? Yeah. Right. See all that? Some of this is the bone, some of this is the right. Exactly. It's normal, pretty much, till a certain point. About here, right? It starts getting weird, right? See, some of it's bone, but some of the bone's missing, right? It's supposed to be bone throughout that, right? And see, that's where you see the image where it looks like a bat. It's not supposed to look like a bat, right? No. Right. That's spinal problems. That's super spinal problems, right? Okay. see if I can match that image. But if you keep trying to murder me over the same problem and God doesn't save me from it, you're the problem now. No, not me, not me. There is no even if. There is no even if. Then who's on here? The doctors? The doctors. Right. See, that's the problem too, right? But you still gotta be attacked too for all this to be as it is, right? Well, that ain't normal, right? There it is. Well, it's not quite this one, but it's close to it. Right. It's within the parameters of it. I know. Right. But they can't see that. Right. They're blind as bats, aren't they? See, denying the injury ain't gonna change the injury either. And if God healed it, God healed it. You can't change that shit. But like I said, that's probably this one, right? Somewhat. I think I got one more, right? Right. Maybe that's this one. I don't know. Well, you see how it's all. See, that's the bone, right? Of the pelvis, right? And it's missing the bone. Wow, wow. But this is supposed to be from just a 3-story fall, too, right? Right. Kitties look good, though. Right, right. Oh, you can see, yeah, you can see. Yeah. This might be that. I'm not quite sure yet. There we go. That's that. Right. This is that. Right. You can tell. Right. See right in there. Right. So that's what it looks like. For real. For real. Now it's one thing. This is one thing. Now that's a what? Supraspinal cord injury. Right. See, all that's supposed to be bone, man. Yes, it is. Now, that's why I'm trying to find a CT. Right. Two.
When you look at an MRI or a CT scan and you're less familiar with what's going on, the best thing you can do is to get the radiologic report and go through the MRI reading this report. The radiologist, for the most part, should have diagnosed most of the impending problems, and you can follow along with the MRI imaging report to understand how to interpret an MRI or a CT scan. We're now going to discuss CT images, myelograms, and the CT myelogram. The CT myelogram used to be the great tool for understanding spine pathology. It is no longer as good.
But they're trying to justify something that is questionable because no one reported it for 26 years. And it took 11 years in 2005 when YouTube started coming out.
I picked this image because
it
shows perfectly the architecture of
Unless
the
you
vertebra
got
with the trabecula. The
information I don't
that are made obviously of cortical
about
bone
it,
matter.
right?
You can see the beginnings of the
And
cartilaginous
SVU started
end plates that are
airing
going
in
to form the
99.
epiphysis.
Let's see, I'm
And you can
home
see a
all day
perfect
watching TV,
apophysis
so you
here
know I'm aware of
between
it.
the posterior
I
elements
don't know what you're
and the
doing,
anterior
right?
elements. This is why CT is better for bone in
Because
general
you're not injured
than
like
an
I
MRI
am.
is. This is to remind everybody that, again, the spinal canal changes in volume with flexion extension. With flexion, it opens by 30%, and with extension, narrows quite a bit. So flexion extension is an important part of understanding the pathoanatomy of the spine.
Not when you're laying
This is a
straight down.
myelogram, lateral x-ray view of the lumbar spine of a patient who has significant central stenosis at L3-4. This is a great view to indicate what happens on flexion versus extension. If you look very carefully right in this area, you'll see dye that flows from the top of L3 down below L4, and that dye pattern disappears completely in a cutoff sign when the patient extends, a good indicator of what happens in the spine with flexion versus extension in the face of stenosis. This is a lateral myelogram of a patient with a big disc herniation and central stenosis. You can see at the level of the other discs, there are disc bulges, and it does narrow the canal somewhat.
So I've got to give credit. This is Dr.
And with the apple core,
Korenman,
this is
MD-DC.
and this is a patient.
He's got several other
neurogenic claudication.
channels.
Again, on the AP,
neckandback.com, studyspine.com, askspinedoc.com, and studyspine.com.
No dye indicating significant narrowing of the canal.
So, because I'm using this for what? Educational purposes, right?
This is a myelogram of the nerve.
You can do that with music too.
And again, you have to remember what you're looking at. If you look carefully, you can see the Scotty dog again with the ear,
music is educational.
the eye, and the foreleg.
Because it can be taught.
What you want to follow is you want to follow
can teach
the
you to
nerve
sing a
root.
song. Sing a song. Make it simple to last the whole day long.
The dye ends right here. That's where the dorsal root ganglion starts, and dye won't go beyond that point. But you can see this is a normal root at L4 on the left, and on the right side you can follow the nerve root to here, but then you lose the nerve root at the disc level, and you can imagine in your mind's eye a disc herniation compressing that root and creating the cutoff, preventing the dye from flowing down the root. Now we start to get into this CT myelogram. So obviously you don't have everything superimposed. These are single slices. And you can look at the vertebra, you can look at the dye. Here is the spinal cord ending at the cauda equina behind L1.
Those CD only goes back to 09,
deficit
right?
here at L4-5, a significant block. Here on this image, if you look carefully, you can see the left nerve root. And that's
it's called treating imagery, but not sure what the hell's wrong with
this. And that's simply because of the disc herniation.
But walking on it anyway, by faith, not by sight. For we
This
walk by
demonstrates a
faith,
CT scan.
Christians, right?
Actually, it's
Not
a
by sight. Not
post-discal
by
image. You
sight.
can see the dye within the disc. But it's great to look at bony architecture. Again, this can be seen on an MRI, but here on an X-ray, you can see perfect degenerative changes. You can see the erosion
But
of the
we
end
do
plate,
see, we
cyst,
also
thinning, and
see
spur
when
formation.
something's going on around here.
Sometimes CTs are more
Something
valuable
going on
than
around
MRIs.
here.
The CT is valuable because sometimes MRIs can't pick up bony surfaces. Again,
Right,
if you look at
right.
the MRI image, whatever is black is typically bone, tendon, or ligament. So here you can define there's an ossicle that's grown off of the superior facet, creating foraminal stenosis. So sometimes CTs are quite valuable.
See, this is the
Again,
problem.
down here, you can see a bone spur
That's
going
supposed to
back
be
from
bone.
the top of L5. You can
It
imagine
is
the nerve root
missing
in the
bone.
middle theoretically be
As if
compressed by
struck
that.
or something. I don't know. How can it be missing bone?
On
You just fell
axial
2 1/4
images,
stories.
you can
And,
nicely see
or from the
facet
window ledge of a
subluxation
3-story
and
building.
degenerative change. This facet is somewhat degenerative, but still relatively intact, and the alignment is normal. But we get here, we see this facet is subluxed forward on this one. This is very typical with the degenerative spondylolisthesis. You can imagine the spur on the anterior tip of this as you stand up, pushing forward and compressing the nerve root, creating lateral recess stenosis. This is a CT myelogram of a normal level and the level below of stenosis. On the normal level, again, the sac, the thecal sac, is full of dye, and the two starting to exit nerve roots are also full of dye. This is relatively normal. And if we get to the next image, you can see that the thecal sac is very thin. You can see black here from the thickened ligamentum flavum and a little black here from the disc, creating significant stenosis. Again, there's different types of stenosis. The last one we saw, ligamentum flavum. Here is facet that's ingrowing and creating significant narrowing. And here is, again, is lateral recess stenosis from the degenerative facet spurs, as well as thickened ligamentum flavum, all creating lateral recess and central stenosis. CTs are valuable looking at discs.
Yep, we can
If
tell
you
that one's
have
out of shape.
localized pain only on one side, you can pick this up with an MRI, but it's easier to see on a CT scan, where this is a healthy disc here, a healthy disc here, and this disc is very degenerative with the typical sclerosis of the end plates, the invagination of the trabecula with greater bone, and cyst formation.
Well, that's
and spur
why
formation.
I'm trying to
This is
help
typical
Jack
unilateral
Osborne with his
degenerative
MS,
disc
whatever
disease.
he has got. I mean, this
Where the
is
CTs
faith in
are
God that
valuable,
it
quite
can heal it.
valuable, is
At
determining
least to the
pars
point that it's
fractures and whether
arthritis
they're
instead
healing.
of paralysis,
MRIs
right?
are not
Come
very
on,
good for
come
this.
on.
Here you can see
Let
a
me show
pars
you where
fracture
it's
here
at.
at
Come
L3,
on, come
and another
on. Let
pars
me show you
fracture
where it's
at
at.
L5.
Come on, come on. Let me show you
This
where
is
it's
a
at.
CT scan, a lateral view, showing the obvious pars fracture at L4. Here we can see the intact L5 pars and the intact L3 pars, but the 4 level has a pars fracture. You can get a determination of the age looking at the ends of the fracture to see if they're rough or smooth. And on the axial view, this is what a pars fracture will look like bilaterally. Here's another kid who's quite young and had a fracture, and you can look at the age of the fracture. The bone ends are rounded. There's a slip here. This fracture probably occurred much earlier.
But
He's
see,
been
it's
living
what?
with it and developed pain
Rounded.
subsequently.
Not flat. Not flat.
There are
How the
patients who
fuck
come
is
into
it?
my
Excuse
office
me, but how is
after
it
they've had
flat?
surgery at other places.
It's not supposed to be like that.
They develop increased
At all.
pain. There are times you can
Right.
have an iatrogenic fracture.
See, it's too flat.
where
This
you
is too
have
flat.
somebody coming in and taking some
It's
bone
supposed to be
away
flat.
and thinning down the area enough where you can get a fracture. And here's a great example of a facet fracture, where on the right side the facet is intact into the lamina,
Trying
and
to
on the
take me
left side you can see the
crazy,
fracture right
crazy.
through here. This is again a good example, L4, where you see the fully intact facet interlocking with L5, but L5 has a fracture through the pars, and this facet is
Right
a
in here.
free-floating fragment. Again, we talked about
See.
SI joint problems, and they can be determined
That's a joint
sometimes
problem.
with
See
a
right
CT
there.
as well as an MR.
If
See
I
these erosions
see,
as the
see, mine's
beginning
missing the
of a
bone.
spondyloarthropathy. And
Yeah.
a CT can
It's supposed to
lead
have bone
to
there.
the
See.
diagnosis of a spondyloarthropathy. You can
That
see
ain't no
a
look.
relatively normal CT scan on the right side.
That ain't no
But you go to the left side and
look.
there's an autofusion, and this is typical with one of the spondyloarthropathies that isn't ankylosing spondylitis.
It's supposed to look like that. Right. And that ain't no look. No, it ain't. All you gotta do is what? Compare them. Compare them. No. Please, no.
The X-ray is probably the most valuable tool you have in your armamentarium other than the MRI. The X-ray can define problems and pathologies, and I like to call it the poor man's MRI. If you use it
Well, see, when you're
appropriately, you can
looking
come
for
up
a
with number of
girlfriend,
diagnostic
every woman you
disorders.
come in
If you carefully
contact,
screen the images,
you might
that's what we're
be
going to
attracted
dissect
to
the
her.
X-ray and understand what
But
all
you
of
can
these
read
changes mean.
if she's responding back.
We're going to look first at an AP lumbar X-ray. When you scan these images, you should have a typical scan in mind for normal, so things that are abnormal will pop out at you. For example, the first thing I look at in an AP is the alignment of the spine and the levelness of the sacrum. The sacrum itself should be level. If not, is there a pelvic obliquity due to malformation of the pelvis or to a short leg?
Right?
Sometimes you can see the
Abby,
hips on
normal.
X-rays, sometimes you can't on these lumbar X-rays. So you want to have a scan. In the scan, I always look at the pedicles. I always look at the spinous processes for rotation. I look at the alignment of one vertebra on the next. I look for congenital anomalies such as Bartolotti syndrome. We look for sacroiliac pathology. This is a very valuable film to understand alignment, especially scoliosis. This is another normal lumbar spine film. The alignment looks to be well. The vertebrae are all parallel. The disc spaces are open. The pedicle shadows are all intact.
The pelvis does not
Intercrestal
look like
line
Mickey at
at
mouth
L5 is
ears.
below. The intercrestal line runs through 4 or 5. Look at the sacrum and the sacroiliac joints. And what I do is I develop a normal dictation so that I can have this running in my mind while I view the film. This is an AP lumbar X-ray. There's no evidence of scoliosis. Pedicle shadows are intact. There's no rotation. The intercrestal line runs through 4-5. Sacroiliac joints appear to be normal. Hips are not visualized. If you use that type of dictation, you can visualize a film and in rote terms look for normals and abnormals. Now, in children or adolescents, they're going to have some growth plates open. And you'll notice on this AP pelvis, we have this apophysis with this black line. This apophysis is called a Risser 4, and we won't bother with that right now. That's more for development and scoliosis. But you can look at films and determine the age of the patient.
You see,
many times
arthritis
simply based
is what?
upon these clues.
Bad?
For
Good?
example, here's another
Does it
pelvis
prove
you can see
that the
in Risser
bone
line
should
or
be
Risser 4.
paralyzed or the spinal cord?
On a lateral
Okay.
film, this is probably one of the most valuable
Right.
films for pathology.
I
If
can't
you
convince
look,
you
you
of
can see
anything,
there's
even if
a
I'm right,
lordosis.
even
You
if
can
I'm
measure
right.
the lordosis.
And you're
That
wrong.
should be normal for
You
the
can
sacrum.
persist in evil, Pastor
The
Cameron John
alignment of the back
Thomas.
of the vertebra, so you can look for any displacement for
You and
for,
Pastor
of course,
Lloyd Ray
is an
Davis, too.
anterolisthesis or
You're my demons now.
spondylolisthesis,
You're my
and a
demons.
retrolisthesis
You're my
is a
Satan.
backward
You're my
position of one
Satan.
vertebra on the one below.
You're my
Very
enemy.
important
You're
to
not
look
my
at the disc
friend.
heights here, so you can determine if there's any degenerative change. This is a very normal film. Probably one of the most important set of films you can get, other than an MRI, are flexion extension films.
It's rounded.
And this is because if there's any instability,
Yes, it is. Yes,
you
it
won't
is.
see
Right
it
in there.
necessarily
Right
on an
in
MRI
there.
because the
You
MRI
can't
image
see it as
is
much
done in
there.
a supine position and there's no motion. The flexion extension images use gravity, and gravity can very much determine what is going on. Here's a normal flexion study. What you want to look at is the alignment here. Again, you don't want to pick up any vertebra that's shifting forward or backward. And then on extension, exactly the same thing. Look for alignment to make sure there is stability. You have to start then looking for congenital
But like I
anomalies
said,
or
right.
other degenerative changes.
See right in
Here's
there?
a patient, if you
That,
look
this is what
carefully,
he's talking
you'll see
about.
a
This ain't normal.
transverse process on the
Either.
right, and on the left there's this very large transverse process that articulates with the sacrum. This is a transverse alar articulation. Typically, some people might call this a
Because you
sacralization of L5
are
or
not
lumbarization
taught
of
to
S1,
believe in
depending on
God.
how you count. This
When you
generally
see something
means
like
that
this, you're going to freak
vertebra
or deny
is
you
not
seeing
moving.
what you see, right?
You can then start to
That's
look
what I
at the
mean.
pelvis. Again,
So,
you still want
but
to
there again,
look at
I
the
still
sacrum,
fell
look
3
for any
stories, but there again,
type
should it
of
be this
spur formation,
bad?
and look at the hips.
Or was I
Look
attacked
at
by
the
people on base?
front joint here, the pubic
I don't know. I
symphysis,
don't know.
for any sclerosis, narrowing, or changes. Look
Over the
for
gauge shoot.
the float, as I like to say, of the
It's
femoral head in the
something.
acetabulum. The reason why this looks like it's floating is because the hip and the acetabulum are lined with hyaline cartilage. Hyaline cartilage does not show up on
But
an
you
X-ray,
can't see that.
and so this float is an indication of the health of the hyaline cartilage.
And see, this here is
We were
normal.
talking earlier about mock lines, or lines that occur from
That's in the
shadows
cervical
that
spine,
make
though.
it appear that there is a problem in the spine. I drew this X-ray up
But
because
see-
it's a perfect example. This arrow shows here that you can see the pedicle on this side show up on an X-ray, and so this float is an indication.
Again, you do not see the same abnormality here as you do here, right? See, this pelvis is what? Normal. This pelvis is mine, and it's what? Off-kiltered. The whole left side. I mean, not partially. Do you think a fall can do this, or something like a police baton? Being beat with it, right? Could do that, right? But could just falling 3 stories do that? All that damage? No. Pathology. Hello. Even if I fell catty corner, it wouldn't explain all that injury, right? I don't think so. Here's a little bit better one, right? But again, right, you're comparing it to that, right? Not normal at all, right? And mine's got the yin and yang. What's happening?